Well, hello. It's the Brian Hornback Podcast, episode number 5. We've got quite a few things to talk about today, but as we get started, I do want to encourage you to check out my friend Stokes Nielsen's podcast, Stokes and Friends. It's STOKESAND, Friends, FRIENDS. You can search for that on Apple Podcast, any of your podcast platforms. And on Instagram, it's Stokes and Friends. Stokes Nielsen interviews some of entertainment's youngest, brightest entertainers, and has a great message in addition to music. Got a lot of things to talk about today, but the main thing is I do want to thank you for tuning in to the Brian Hornback Podcast. We are now on Apple Podcast. We're now on Anchor FM, which is our host, and we are on Google Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on just about every podcast platform you can be on, but got on Apple Podcast within the last 24 hours. So appreciate you finding me here. Again, this is the Brian Hornback Podcast, which is in conjunction with BrianHornback.com. So a lot of the things that you may see on BrianHornback.com, we'll talk about here on the Brian Hornback Podcast, or vice versa. So let's get right into it. This is Friday, November the 20th, 2020, 11/20/2020. And the Knox County Board of Health has met this evening. They started meeting about 5 o'clock tonight. And they weren't taking any action. They were just talking about the pandemic. And they were talking about mitigating, some mitigating things that they can do. Ultimately, they met for about 2 hours, had a discussion for about 2 hours. Ultimately, they're going to meet again on Monday night, and they're going to look at several different mitigating efforts, potentially some things they potentially could talk about Monday night and act on is they could decrease restaurant capacity to 25%. We've had that before. They could extend the curfew to anyone that sells alcohol. That would include restaurants. Move that curfew from 11 to maybe 10 or 9. And they did say tonight that one thing that they did not see Knoxville being able to do is what Nashville has implemented, which Nashville is requiring anyone that's going to have an event over 8 to get a permit for that, including, I believe, including family dinners and whatnot. So they're going to meet on Monday night, I think 5 o'clock. And whatever, if they do enact some mitigating efforts, those would take effect on Wednesday morning, the day before Thanksgiving. So let me know what you think. Brian at BrianHornback.com by email. If you've got thoughts on the pandemic and the rising numbers, let me know what you think. I don't want all the emails that the Board of Health gets because I don't get paid for it. But I do want to know what your thoughts are on it. Just to personalize it for you just a little bit, a good friend of mine, Bill Collier, I can tell you that because it was in the Oak Ridge newspaper. But he passed away. He got it in late August, I believe is what the paper said, and he passed away in October. Just a few years older than me. Worked out at Oak Ridge at the lab, and he got it and developed some blood clots, and it took his life. And I have another friend that's just a couple years older than me that's currently in the hospital, who has fortunately come off the ventilator. But I do believe I do believe it's a serious situation. I do believe that we need to be very cautious. I'm in a, obviously, Brian Hornback podcast is not my full-time job, but I'm in a job that has required me to work every day and work around people who are masked and unmasked. And I've chosen to wear a mask because my employer, one, requires me to, and two, now that I've seen the severity of it, I do think that there's some value to it. But I also believe in the First Amendment. As you may remember from the first episode, I love the First Amendment. The First Amendment is very important to me. And so those of you that are not mask fans, you have every right to say what you want to say because we have a First Amendment right. So, again, let me know your thoughts. Brian at brianhornback.com is my email address, and let me know what you think. Now, let's switch. We're going to talk, before we switch to another subject, let me talk to you about Interagency Insurance. Interagency Insurance is a local company here in Knoxville. It was established 54 years ago in 1966. My good friend Lou Moran III, he and his father run that Interagency Insurance Company. They're licensed insurance business in 38 states. So you can they're on the web. You can Google or do a web search for Interagency Insurance in Knoxville, or give them a call at 865-637-4519. I want to talk to you about a meeting that happened this week, the Board of Zoning Appeals. Now, what happens with the Board of Zoning Appeals is they, if you need a variance or if you have a zoning issue, ultimately they're a de novo hearing. So in other words, if you don't like what happened at the Metropolitan Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals is the final arbiter. So they're the final appeals court, so to speak. It's 9 members that are volunteer, that are appointed by the county commission to hear these issues. And there's some property out there in northeast Knox County. Sorry about that. There's a property out there that was zoned planned residential. It was in a very much an agricultural area, but it's planned residential zoning. And there's a residential juvenile behavioral health facility in Blount County called the Villages. It's run by a company called Acadia Healthcare. And they're relocating from Blount County and wanting to relocate to Knox County. And so the Metropolitan Planning Commission ruled that this residential behavioral health, mental health treatment facility, which is cottages, cabins, that type of thing on a piece of property, could be located out in the Wise Springs area around Maloneyville Road. Interesting thing about the Wise Springs, Maloneyville Road area is that nearly 100 years ago, the old work farm for the Knox County Sheriff's Department was built out there. Since then, a detention facility has been put out there. A regional training academy has been put out there. The Sheriff's Department's property is put out there. The work release program operates out there. And the old work farm is a lot of storage and some offices and that kind of thing. So for at least the last 100 years, there's been some form of law enforcement presence out there in that area. And so this proposed development is going to be is going to share a property, from what I understand, with the Sheriff's Department. And so the neighbors, the neighborhoods, the neighbors in that area, other than the Sheriff's Department, are in opposition to it. And so there was an in-depth meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Unfortunately, only 6 members were there on a Thursday, and 6 of the 9. And you got to have 5 to pass anything, and the vote came to 4-2. So they didn't have enough votes to pass. Basically, the motion that had 4 votes was not to allow the facility to be there. So they postponed it till December. Here's my issue. Blount County has a lot of the mental health treatment facilities. They have Cornerstone, they have Peninsula, and they have the Villages. The problem we have in Knoxville is, for a long time we had Lakeshore, and Lakeshore closed. The state closed it up and turned that property over to the city, and we got a world-class park there. But, it was in a very affluent area of town. Lakeshore was right there at North Shore, Lions Bend. And, it wasn't necessarily a secured facility. They didn't control the people that came in and came out of it. And, the sheriff spoke in opposition to this new facility out there because he talked to Sheriff Barone, who he actually had worked for a number of years. And, here's the bottom line. We have juveniles, we have adults that have severe mental health issues. We all have mental health issues. There needs to be a facility. And the problem we have is in Knoxville and in Knox County, there are rehab homes. There are facilities for adults in places that you don't really even know about. I mean, they're there, and they're in a zoned area, and the neighbors don't know what they are really. But there needs to be one for the juveniles, and it's unfortunate that we're in a situation where we have to have it, but we do have to have it. And not to get super religious on this thing, but but for the grace of God go I. I mean, I've been fortunate that we raised 3 adult children now that are 3 adults, they're contributing adult citizens, and it's a situation where there are juveniles out there that really need help. And just because you want to be a not in my backyard, everything that the neighbors had demanded Acadia Healthcare has accommodated. And ultimately, they've hired an attorney. The neighborhood has an attorney. Acadia Healthcare has an attorney. So no matter what the Board of Zoning Appeals does, it's more than likely going to go to court. So a judge or jury is going to have to decide this case. But, at what point do we say that juveniles need treatment, and they don't need to have to go to North Dakota or Wyoming to get it? We need to take care of the kids in our community. And so Juvenile Judge Tim Irwin had sent a letter, and Board of Zoning Appeals Chairman James Corcoran read that letter, very compelling letter. And the bottom line is, when the state closed Lakeshore and started sending our mental health to Chattanooga and up toward Johnson City, it was a major disservice to the folks here in Knoxville and in the surrounding area. And these juveniles really need treatment, and they need treatment here. We don't need to send them off. So let me know what you think about that issue as well, because I think it's important that we take care of our own. And I think Acadia's Healthcare is doing their very best to make improvements to the facility here in Knoxville from maybe some things they've learned in Blount County. And I think they need to be given an effort. And no neighborhood's going to want it. But the bottom line is, our kids need the treatment. So it's something else that we'll be talking about again, I'm sure, on the Brian Hornback podcast in December. But that's kind of where we're at, and we're almost to the 15-minute hour. And so I try to keep these at 15 minutes. So I will remind you that for all your real estate needs, if you're buying or selling, Just Homes Group, part of the Realty Executives team in Farragut, Julia Hurley is who you need to call, thejusthomesgroup.com, or give her a call on her cell phone, 865-237-7328. That's the Just Homes Group in West Knoxville. Again, thank you, those of you that have been listening to the Brian Hornback podcast now on our 5th episode. And check us out at brianhornback.com. And, the plan is that these podcasts will go up on Tuesday and Friday. This one was a little bit late going up, but it's here. So thanks for listening. Be sure and whatever podcast forum you're listening to us on, you subscribe to it. If you're on YouTube, give us a like, give us a share, give us a comment, but also subscribe. We need all the subscriptions we can get on YouTube and everywhere else. And again, until next time, y'all be safe, be good, and we'll see you again real soon.